Welcome to the Emancipated Mind Show. My name is Anneshia Freeman. I'm also known as the locksmith because I make keys for locks in the mind. I'm an award-winning master-level therapist, and I also have an MBA. I'm the creator of a cognitive restructuring program entitled The Lies That Bind. This show exposes and challenges dysfunctional unconscious beliefs that cause people to engage in self-defeating behaviors repeatedly despite the consequences. This show is streamed live via Facebook and YouTube every Thursday from 7 o'clock p.m. to 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, welcome to the Emancipated Mind Show. Hello, my name is Anneshia Freeman. I'm also known as the locksmith because I make keys for locks in the mind. Welcome to episode 18 of the Emancipated Mind Show. This is a show that exposes the root causes of many problems in people's lives. Problems such as self-sabotage, procrastination, people-pleasing, dysfunctional relationships, perfectionism, addictions, low self-esteem, and codependency. Tonight, I'm focusing on a topic from one of my books. This particular book is entitled, What's Really Going On? It's a book that contains 31 articles that were previously featured in a bi-weekly column that I had in a particular newspaper for several years. So tonight's topic is the chapter in my book entitled The Land of Should versus the Is case. Now, I'll explain what that means. So when I was in school working on my bachelor's in business, I have 4 college degrees. And so I have a bachelor's in business. One of the classes that I took was entitled Customer Service Strategies. One of the professors, or the professor for that particular class, he taught us about the difference between should and is. So in the example he used, he said if a customer comes to the complaint department or calls the complaint department to talk about something that they're upset about, he says, you should not tell them what should have happened. They are aware that what should have happened did not happen, and that's why they're complaining. He says it's time when a person complains to talk about what you are going to do to address what is happening as opposed to what should have happened. Now, that's an important concept with regards to business, but I've also found that it's applicable to one's personal life and one's professional life outside the context of customer service. So I'm going to talk about it in regards to relationships and with regards to addressing societal problems. I opened that quote in the chapter in my book I opened that chapter with a quote by Albert Einstein. The quote says, "A man should look for what is and not for what he thinks should be." Now, when I'm talking about the land of should versus the is case, I'm not saying that we should never talk about how things should be. That's an important conversation. But a lot of times that's all people do is talk about how things should be, or they act like the way things should be is the way things are. Either way of addressing a situation, think whether you're constantly talking about how things should be, or if you're acting like the way things are and the way they should be is the same. If they're not, both are dysfunctional. So first, let's talk about relationships. I'm going to talk about my experience. Years before, I did a lot of cognitive restructuring on myself. I'm the first client of my program, The Lies That Bind. I had to work through a lot of dysfunctional unconscious beliefs due to unaddressed childhood trauma. So early in my process, the process of my healing journey, I was in dysfunctional relationships. A lot of times I was shooting on myself in those relationships. I was shooting on myself. I would be in relationships with people who were mistreating me, and I would say, you shouldn't treat people like that. You shouldn't do that to me. I'm not doing that to you. And some of those people were probably thinking should too. They were probably thinking you should find someone who shares your values and ideals about relationships instead of being in a relationship with me if you got a problem with the way I'm treating you. They were probably thinking should too, just a little differently than I was. So a lot of individuals do that. They find themselves in relationships that are dysfunctional, and they act as if what should be happening is happening, or they'll just talk about what should be happening, and they'll express a lot of hurt and anger because their expectations are not being met. And in that case, they are also shooting on themselves. Hey, dealing with the way things is much more effective, and it makes more sense to address the way things are instead of acting like the way things should be are the way they are if they're not. So I know that's kind of wordy there, so I'll break it down. I no longer struggle with acting as if the way things should be in a relationship is the way things are. If I'm interacting with someone and the relationship dynamics are unhealthy, I I will try to see if we can come to some understanding using boundaries and compromise and negotiation. But if we can't, then we're going to do the benediction on the relationship. I no longer spend my life shooting on relationships, shooting on myself. I deal with situations the way they are, the is case. And so let's talk about the land of should versus the is case from another perspective. I work as a therapist and a life coach, so I'm in the human service industry. And I'm going to read the way I wrote this directly from the chapter in my book because I want to read it the exact way that I wrote it in that particular column when I was talking about the land of should versus the is case. Many times that people who work in various industries, and in this case, I'm talking about the human service industry, there are certain programs where people act as if should and is the same thing. In the is case, there are programs that say they help people. And in some situations, they are doing exactly, those programs are doing exactly what they claim to do. They're helping people. But then there's other programs that should be helping people. They say they're helping people, but they're not. In those cases, what should be happening is not happening. And in order for that program to actually start doing what they should be doing, they have to admit what's going on. It's been my personal experience. I'm also a researcher. I have studied some programs and I found that they look really good on paper. And in some cases, programs are doing what they say they're going to do and it matches what's on the paper. In other cases, that's not what's happening. Sometimes it's not the program design. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not the program. The program looks really good on paper, the design, it was well crafted, but sometimes it's staffed with people who have not been properly trained how to deliver the program. And or in some cases, the program may be staffed with people who don't particularly care for the population that they're supposed to work with. In that case, there's a problem. There's a problem that needs to be addressed. And a lot of times it can be addressed with training, and sometimes it can be addressed with restaffing or making some staffing adjustments. But if a program claims to do ABC and they're being funded to do ABC, but that's not what they're doing, then should and is are not the same. What should be happening is not what is happening. And the only way to get to should is to address what is happening. You can map the path to should if you address what's going on, whether you're talking about in personal relationships and or this example that I'm using with regards to the human service industry. Now, there are some programs, like I said, that should and is are synonymous. What they say they are doing and what the program should do is happening, and they're having awesome outcomes. But in other cases, that's not happening. There are a lot of societal ills that should be addressed. And in a lot of cases, and I will put myself out there, I'm doing my part. I'm an activist. I'm innovative. I create programs and I manualize them. I train other people. But I'm challenging myself in 2023 to take it to another level, because there are a lot of societal ills that need to be addressed. And we can keep shooting on ourselves, talking about what should happen, what should not be happening in our communities, what should not be happening in different. We can keep doing that, or we can acknowledge what should be happening, what should not be happening. We have to admit what should be happening in a lot of instances is not what's happening. We'd have to admit to ourselves some things that should not be happening are happening. And in order for changes to happen, we have to admit what is going on. Then we can come to the planning table and map the path to should. And in a lot of cases, what should be happening doesn't happen because people struggle with certain dysfunctional unconscious beliefs. For example, a lot of people struggle with the issue, don't make waves. Now, I use the terms issues, unaddressed issues, lies, and the buttons people push interchangeably. Whenever I use those terms, I'm referring to dysfunctional unconscious beliefs that cause people, organizations, companies to engage in the same self-defeating behaviors repeatedly, despite the consequences. With regards to the land of should versus the is case, when there are societal problems that certain programs are created to address, and the programs are not addressing the issues that they're funded to address, sometimes it's people are working in the agency or with the program who have this unconscious belief, don't make waves. They know what should be happening is not happening. And in a lot of cases, they have answers, solutions to help what is happening change to what should be happening. But they're on mute. I nicknamed this belief the internal mute button. It causes people not to speak up in relationships. It causes people not to speak up in their professional lives. And a lot of times, people and society is stuck in toxic, dysfunctional situations because people won't speak up. People won't challenge the status quo. And in order for things to go from the way they are to the way they should be, some people are going to have to speak up. So I'm going to read the functional belief that challenges the lie, don't make waves. If there is a problem or a situation that is causing me tribulation or making my life uncomfortable, then I owe it to myself to speak up. I'm going to tweak that sentence a little bit, because I'm not only talking about how this issue affects people in their personal lives, I'm also talking about how it affects people in their professional lives. Why a lot of societal problems are not being addressed, although there's all sorts of fundings for programs that are supposed to address these issues in our communities. A lot of times it's not happening because people who have answers, who have solutions, who know, they're sitting at the table. They know that the program is not doing what it's supposed to do. They're sitting there with this belief. So if there is a problem or a situation where I work at, especially if you work in the human service industry, in any industry, because these types of problems can happen in the food industry, in the criminal justice industry, in a lot of different, in a medical field, the medical industry, there are things that should not be happening that are. And until people start standing up and say, okay, something's wrong with this picture, and here's the corrective action plan, then those things will continue. So I don't have to be afraid to speak up because it will make others uncomfortable or cause them to have to look at how they are behaving. If there is something that I feel is out of order, or that is hurting me, or that is hurting society, that's hurting my community, I have an obligation to myself to address that issue. I can use wisdom in how I address it, but it needs to be addressed. If I'm not sure how to handle a situation with diplomacy, then I can ask for input from others. There are some situations that are so out of order, I can skip the diplomacy and get right to the point. My happiness and well-being depends on my willingness to confront situations and people when necessary. I will develop that skill. It is my responsibility. Now, that's with regards to your personal life. But with regards to these programs that I'm talking about that's supposed to be addressing societal ills, our community, our children's future depends on our willingness to confront situations when necessary, to speak up. Again, let me make this point. There are some programs that are doing what they're supposed to do. And to those programs and organizations and agencies, we say thank you. But there are a lot of programs, organizations, agencies that are receiving funds to address certain societal problems, and what should be happening is not what's happening. And we can stop shooting on ourselves. We can stop shooting. We can come out of the land of should and start dealing with what is happening. I'm doing my part, and I encourage others to do their part, because there's a lot of people out here, and some of you may be listening to me now. You have answers. You have solutions to problems. Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to go in the lab. Sometimes the lab is your home office with your notebooks and your computer, and start designing. If you see programs in your community that's not addressing problems, stop talking about what should be happening. If you have some answers, create a program to address the problem. Write a grant. Start speaking out. I do my part. I have workbooks, books, program manuals. I do trainings for other providers. I'm doing my part. And I encourage others to do their part, to come out of the land of should and deal with what is, deal with the is case, deal with what is happening. So we can go from what is happening to what should be happening. But first, we have to admit where we're at. We cannot get where we need to go if we're acting like we're already there. I have been to some award dinners. I will not mention where, but I have been to some award dinners where there were awards given out for certain services that weren't really happening. I'm like, okay, like how did you determine this award? Now, some awards, they're deserved, they're well earned. There's some organizations and some programs that are revolutionizing and communities. They're addressing social problems, but there are just as many that are not. That's funded. And so instead of talking about what should be happening, talking about what should not be happening, we're going to have to start dealing with what is happening and make some plans. Come to the planning table. Come to the planning table. And we can open our planning meeting, these meetings that we need to start having to address what should be happening in the education field, to address what should be happening in the medical field, to address what should be happening in the criminal justice field, to address what should be happening in the human service field with regards to therapy and counseling. Like, we can stop talking about what should be happening, what should not be happening, and start making some things happen. I'm doing my part, but I'm challenging myself to do even more in 2023, to do more trainings, create more program concepts, to challenge more issues and societal ills that a lot of times we want to act like that's not happening in our communities. Our children is the future, and they're dependent on somebody to stand up and say, okay, we're going to solve some of these problems. Some of these problems can be solved with a ideal, a concept, a policy change. Yeah. But a lot of individuals who have the knowledge and the skill set to make these changes, they're going to have to address this dysfunctional, unconscious belief. Don't make waves. And a lot of I've heard people who have said, you know, they want to spiritualize the fact that they're on mute, and they'll say things, well, like, I don't want to upset people, you know, I like to be kind, and I'm operating in love when I don't challenge people. That's not love. That's fear-based personal self-interest, because love will protect, defend, challenge, create, change. That's what love will do. Love don't sit on mute while our community is being tore up by a lot of social problems and talk about what should happen. Shooting on ourselves. Nope. We are too smart. There's too many smart, gifted, talented people walking around the world who can change these issues, can challenge these problems, can fix what's wrong in our communities, what's wrong in these different industries, can revolutionize the education field, can revolutionize the medical field, can revolutionize the food and nutrition field, can revolutionize the criminal justice field. There's too many of us with information that can do that. If a program says they're doing a certain thing and they're being funded to do that thing, that's what they should be doing. And if what they're doing is not matching, then there's a problem. And we need to start copying to what is happening so we can map the path to should. And we can open our first planning meeting by saying we the people in order to form a more perfect union. How about that? Let's go all get to the table. Let's get a group of professionals from the criminal justice field at a table, a group of professionals from the medical field, a group of professionals, and talk about, okay, what is going on that needs to be fixed? We don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. There are some good things happening in the education field. There are some good things happening in the criminal justice field. There are some good things happening in the education and the food and industry field. But there's a lot of things that are happening that should not be happening. Instead of talking about them, instead of acting like they don't exist, so instead of acting like we don't see them, we need to address them. If we don't, who will? Who will? There's people who don't have a voice, like they don't have a seat at the table. If we have a seat at a table where we have the ability to influence a program, to influence the industry, we have an obligation. We have an obligation. Some people gave up their life for some of us to have a right to sit at that table. I'm not going to sit there on mute. I'm not. Now, I have mentors who taught me how to address problems. They've taught me there's sometimes when I just need to be in research mode. I need to be sitting there like, very interesting. There's other times where I need to say something. And I had to learn, because I'm an activist. I'm an award-winning activist. And earlier in my activism, I didn't always handle myself appropriately or professionally. But I had some good mentors that taught me how to take a stand and how to do it professionally, how to challenge the status quo, right? But that's going to require that we admit something wrong. Something wrong in this community. There's something wrong in this industry. And it needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed. Should versus is. We can stop shooting on ourselves, talking about what should happen, what should be happening, what should not be happening. And we can address the is case. We can deal with what is happening. So there's another, I'll talk about one more belief. Now I talked about the role that don't make waves plays in should versus is, but there's another belief. It's you're at the mercy of other people's decisions. Remember, these beliefs are unconscious. A person who struggles with don't make waves and you're at the mercy of other people's decisions, they wouldn't walk into a room and say, hello, I have an internal mute button that can be activated by facial expressions, vocal tone, voice inflection, and body language. I will not be speaking up at this meeting. It's an unconscious belief. The same with this belief. People who struggle with this belief, they wouldn't walk into a policy meeting and say, hello, I believe I'm at the mercy of other people's decisions. So whatever decisions you guys make here, I'm going to go along with it. I'm going to raise my hand and vote along with the rest of the majority of you. And I'm not going to challenge anything. I'm not going to speak up. Because there's been times I've been on committees and boards where I challenged something that was being voted on, but the majority won. But I made sure they put it in the meeting minutes, because when we had the next meeting and they reviewed the meeting minutes from the previous meeting, if they didn't put that I disagree with that with that policy being passed, I'm like, oh no, you need to add something to that. Because even if I speak up, even when I speak up and a policy doesn't get changed because the majority outvotes me, I want it documented that this I disagreed, and this is why I disagree. This is something that I see. I see an impact from this policy that maybe you don't see, and I want to document it because we might have to come back and go back to the drawing board. I went to a training years ago with a gentleman who used to do trainings for counselors and therapists. He was one of my favorite trainers. I'm not sure. He was very old. He was a much older gentleman. I don't know if he's still doing it. This was a long time ago. He talked about, he had his own counseling agency before he became a trainer full time. And he talked about a company that came to him and offered him a contract to work with a certain population of people who had a certain disorders. And the way they wanted to do the contract, he said no. He said, I'm not going to do it. He says, the way you set it up, this is not going to help people. No, this is not. He said, I'm not going to do it. And the company told him, well, we'll take this offer to someone else. He says, well, I wish you the best because I'm not doing it. See, he took a stand. He said, yeah, like you should be helping people, but the way you've designed this will not help. It's going to cause harm. He said a year later, they came back to him. They said, okay, because apparently whoever they gave that contract to, it went horribly. Did not go as planned. They came back to him and they said, well, if we gave you the contract, how do you think we should set it up? And he told them how to set it up, and they gave him the contract. See, a lot of people, we have to be willing to take a stand, even if it seems on the front end like it's costing us. Because if we add up the cost of these societal problems and ills that are going unchecked, you're going to be in the millions, and you might even be in the billions, but I know you're going to be in the millions of dollars that these unaddressed societal problems are costing us. And they can be addressed. We are smart, gifted, talented. Come on, we can address these problems in these different industries. But first, we're going to have to stop acting like what should be happening is what is happening, if that's not the case. And I'm going to make this point one more time, because there's a lot of hardworking, dedicated people who are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And should and is are matching, meaning what should be happening is what is happening. And I want to make that point. But there's just as many programs, agencies, and organizations where what should be happening is not happening. Some cases, it's a poor design of a program. Other cases, the program has been designed awesomely, but the staff have not been trained. In some cases, the program is very well designed, but it's staffed inappropriately. Whatever the problem, whatever the reason that what should be happening is not happening, we need to address it. It needs to be addressed. If we don't do it, who's going to do it? So I'm going to read the functional belief that challenges the lie, you're at the mercy of other people's decisions. I am at the mercy of other people's decisions if I allow myself to be. I am an adult more than capable of calling cut on any scene in my life that's not conducive to my mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, and financial well-being. And let's take it to these industries. I'm an adult more than capable of calling cut on these scenes that are not conducive, these scenes that I'm a part of that's not conducive to the well-being of my community, of the industry I'm assigned to work in. When I was a child, I was at the mercy of the decisions of the adults in my life. That was then, this is now. I will take charge of my life and my personal responsibilities. And we who are assigned to work in some of these different industries, that's part of our personal responsibility to make sure what should be happening is what's happening. If I don't, then I am signing a contract with others saying I am giving them control of my life and my well-being, and I will humbly accept whatever decisions that they make. Now, that's with regards to your own personal life. So I'm going to reread that. I'm going to read that sentence again, but I'm going to make it applicable to our assignments with regards to these different industries and addressing societal ills. If I don't take responsibility that I am signing a contract with others who are not doing what they should be doing, saying, I will humbly accept whatever decisions you make, no matter what harm it causes. Once I internalize that I am not at the mercy of other people's decisions, I will be amazed at all the creative energy I possess to maneuver obstacles put in my role by others. A decision not to make a decision is a decision. I can decide to position myself so that the negative actions of others do not affect me. And what does that mean with regards to these programs and things that need to be addressed? I have my own program. And I worked at agencies where I walked in the door with my own program, my own contracts, and my own grant money. And I know that's a little outside the box, but I did it. And even when I was under their umbrella, I did fundraising outside of the agency to raise money to do some of the things I wanted to do that were unique and innovative with my program. I was not at the mercy of the agency to whether or not they was going to help me fund some of these innovative things I wanted to do with the population I was working with. I wanted to do some out of the box things to help them, some things that I believe should have been done that weren't being done. I did my own fundraising. I wrote my own grant. I maneuvered the financial obstacles to make sure that I was able to have the impact, to make sure that what should happen was happening. So that meant I had to stop shooting on myself because I was afflicted by this. I used to walk around shooting on myself, talking about what should be happening and beating the table. And at some point I said, well, maybe you should make what should be happening happen. And that's when I rolled my sleeves up. Yeah. And if I did it, you can too. Well, that's all for episode 18. I'm ending a little early this week. That's all for episode 18 of the Emancipated Mind Show. I will not be going live next Thursday. I'm on vacation all week next Thursday. So I will be back the first week in January of 2023 with episode 19 of the Emancipated Mind Show. Thank you for tuning in and have an awesome rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the Emancipated Mind Show. Join me every week live on Facebook and YouTube on Thursdays from 7 o'clock p.m. to 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For more information about my products and services, feel free to visit my website, AnnesiaConsulting.com, or my website, AnnesiaSpeaks.com. I can also be reached via email at afreeman@AnnesiaConsulting.com. I'll see you next week.